Welcome to the Pardesh channel. Today, we explain Genesis chapter 1 in a clear and simple way, step by step. We're heading right back to page 1 to tackle one of the biggest questions we've ever asked. How did all of this begin?
So we're kicking things off right at the start with the very first book of the Hebrew Bible, which you might also know as the Tanakh. Now, we call the book Genesis, but its Hebrew name is actually its very first word, Beresit. It literally means in the beginning, which, you gotta admit, is the perfect way to kick off the epic story we're about to jump into.
Okay, before we really get going, we need to set a ground rule for how we're going to read this. You see, there are a few different ways to interpret these texts, but today we're sticking to just one. It's called pashhat. And all that means is we're looking at the simple, direct, literal meaning. No secret codes, no deep mystical stuff, just what does the story say, plain and simple.
So with that pashhat lens on, we can ask the big question for today. According to the plain and simple meaning of the text, how did the world begin? What story is Genesis 1 really telling us? So here's the plan. We'll start with those first famous words, then look at what the world was like before creation. After that, we'll go day by day through the 6 days of creation, which are actually split into two cool parts, forming the world and then filling it up. Then we'll wrap up with the key ideas and a quick recap. Sound good? Let's go.
All right, here we go. Verse 1, probably one of the most famous sentences ever written. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. I mean, it's just so direct, so powerful. It sets the stage perfectly. We know who's in charge, and we know the scale of this whole thing is, well, cosmic.
But even in that simple sentence, there's a really cool detail. That first Hebrew word, Beresit. We translate it as in the beginning, but a more literal translation is something like when God began to create. And that little shift, it changes how you see everything. It's not necessarily a single instant, like a big bang, but more like the start of a process, a story that's just getting underway.
And here's another huge piece of the puzzle, right in that first verse. The name used for God is Elohim. Now you have to remember, at the time this was written, most cultures believed in tons of different gods. A god for the sun, a god for the water, you name it. So for the text to say, nope, there's just one source for everything, Elohim, that was a totally radical idea. It lays the groundwork for everything that follows.
Okay, so if verse 1 is the title of the story, verse 2 is the before picture. It tells us what things were like right before creation really kicked off. So, what was the world like? Let's see.
The text uses this amazing Hebrew phrase, tohu vavohu, and it's so hard to translate perfectly because it means so much all at once. Think, unformed, empty, chaotic, a total mess. It's not just a blank slate, it's a slate that doesn't even have a shape yet. Just pure, unordered potential, covered in darkness.
But here's the thing. It's not a dead, empty chaos. The verse ends with this incredible image. And the Spirit of God hovered over the face of the waters. That word, hovered, marahafet in Hebrew, it's the same word used for a bird fluttering or vibrating over its nest. So you get this sense of God's creative energy, just poised, ready to bring order and life out of that chaos. And that's our cue for the first 3 days of creation. The big theme for this first part of the week is all about forming and structuring. We're going to see how God takes that tohu vavohu and starts to create the basic blueprints for the world, mostly by separating and ordering things. And as we go, you're going to notice this really cool rhythmic pattern. It happens almost every day. First, God speaks. He says, "Let there be," and boom, it happens. Then God looks at what he made and says, "It was good." After that, there's usually some organizing or naming going on. And finally, the day wraps up. And there was evening, and there was morning. Let's watch for that pattern.
So day 1, God's first command is, let there be light. And just like that, there was light. God sees the light, says it's good, and then does the very first act of separation. He divides the light from the darkness. He even gives them names. The light is day, and the darkness is night. Just like that, the whole concept of time has begun.
Moving on to day 2, the theme of separation continues. God says, let's have an expanse right in the middle of the waters. This expanse, or firmament, acts like a divider, separating the waters up above from the waters down below, and God calls this expanse heaven. Now, here's a little detail people notice. The phrase, "it was good," is actually missing on this day. The text doesn't tell us why, but it's an interesting little break in the pattern we just talked about.
Day 3 is a big one. It's got a 2-for-1 deal. First, God pulls all the water together, which lets dry land appear. He separates them, calls them earth and seas, and yep, he saw that it was good. But wait, there's more. He then tells the new earth to start sprouting all kinds of vegetation, plants, trees, everything, each one after its kind. That phrase is key, after its kind. It's all about the built-in order of the universe. Everything has its place.
Okay, so we're halfway through, and this is where you can see the absolutely brilliant structure of this whole chapter. Seriously, take a look at this. Days 1, 2, and 3 were all about forming the world, creating the spaces, right? Light and dark, sky and seas, land. Now watch this. The next 3 days are all about filling those spaces. Day 4 is going to fill what was made on day 1, Day 5 will fill Day 2's work, and Day 6 will fill Day 3. It's this perfect mirrored structure. So cool.
All right, now that we see that amazing parallel structure, let's watch it unfold. We're in the second half of the week now. The stages are set, and it's time to bring on the actors.
On day 4, God says, "Let there be lights in the sky." See, this links perfectly back to day 1. That general idea of light now gets specific bodies: the sun, the moon, the stars. And they're not just for decoration. The text tells us their job is to be for signs, for seasons, for days and years. God calls them the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. They're basically the managers of the day and night.
Now for day 5, which fills the spaces from day 2. God commands the water to just teem with living creatures and for birds to fly across the sky. And then we see something totally new. For the very first time, God blesses his creation. He blesses the fish and the birds and says, "Be fruitful and multiply." Life isn't just made, it's given this divine push to thrive and grow.
Day 6 kicks off by filling that last empty space, the dry land from day 3. God tells the earth to bring forth all the land animals. The text groups them into 3 types: cattle, beasts, and all the creepy-crawly things. And there it is again, that phrase emphasizing order. Each one is made after its kind.
But day 6 isn't done yet. In fact, this is the grand finale. The whole tone shifts. Instead of just saying, "Let there be," God seems to pause and deliberate, saying, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion." That change in language is a huge signal. It tells us that what's coming next is something truly special.
So what on earth does that mean in the image of God? Well, looking at the simple meaning, the pashhat, it's not about looking like God physically. Think of it this way. Back then, a king would put up a statue, an image of himself, in a far-off part of his kingdom to show that he ruled there. So being made in God's image means we're meant to be his representatives here on earth. We're given these godlike capacities, like reason, creativity, a moral compass, to help us manage the world on his behalf.
And the text is incredibly clear about who gets this image. Verse 27 says, "Male and female created he them." This is huge. It's saying that the image of God isn't just for one gender. Right from the very start, men and women are presented as equals, both fully sharing in this divine image.
And what about that word dominion? It can sound a little harsh, but again, let's stick to the plain meaning. This isn't permission to just use and abuse the planet. It's a job description. It's a call to be good stewards, to take care of creation, to rule it with the same wisdom and kindness that its creator would.
And then the text throws in this really fascinating detail about how this perfect world worked. God says that he's given all the green plants as food, not just for humans, but for all the animals too. The simple meaning here is that the original creation was completely vegetarian. No one was eating anyone else. It's a picture of perfect peace.
And that brings us to the final assessment. On all the other days, God looked at his work and said it was good. But now, on the last day, with everything complete and humanity in place, he looks over everything he made, and the verdict is upgraded. And behold, it was very good. That's the ultimate seal of approval. The project is complete, and it's perfect. Phew! Okay, we've gone through the whole story, day by day. So let's zoom out. What are the big ideas? What are the main lessons we're supposed to take away from this incredible story?
It really boils down to 4 huge points. 1, there's a single creator behind it all. 2, the world isn't an accident. It was created with order and purpose. 3, the physical world itself is fundamentally good. And 4, humanity has a special, dignified role to play as caretakers of this good world.
And you know, these big ideas aren't just abstract theology. They can be really practical.
The story gives us a model for bringing order to the chaos in our own lives. That constant refrain, "It was good," reminds us to stop and appreciate the good things around us, to practice gratitude. And of course, there's that timeless call to be responsible stewards of our world.
All right, before we wrap this up, let's just do a super quick recap of that incredible week, just to lock it all in.
Remember, we started with tohu vavohu, that formless chaos. Day 1, light. Day 2, sky and seas. Day 3, land and plants. Then came the filling. Day 4, the sun, moon, and stars. Day 5, fish and birds. And finally, Day 6, land animals, and as the pinnacle, humanity. All of it bringing the universe from chaos to a cosmos. Declared very good.
So, I'll leave you with this to think about. If the text tells us that the world's default setting, its foundational state, is very good, then what does that say about our job today? What is our role in protecting and maintaining that goodness in the world we live in?
Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.